everybody. It's Lou. Welcome to the Intelligent Community, the Soul of the City podcast. Today, we're going to actually do something that we haven't done in a while. We're going to rebroadcast a podcast that I think you're really going to find fascinating still. It took place 2 months after the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022, February 2022. This podcast took place in late April of that year, and it was called Leadership in Unconventional Times. And among the panelists were Tyler Gooch from the city of Winnipeg, which was in the Intelligent Community of the year before, Moaz Chowbani, ICF's juror and deputy CIO, formerly of Columbus, Ohio. But our star attraction, if you will, for that podcast was Vera Bergengruen. Vera at the time was the Washington correspondent for Time magazine. She's currently a correspondent for the Wall Street Journal and appears frequently on American television and international television. Vera had written a lead story for Time magazine after that invasion from the ground. She was in Kyiv, and the Russians, of course, were invading. And she wrote a story that was all about an intelligent community move by the city of Kyiv. Their IT department reinvented itself on the fly and mobilized very, very quickly. And among the things they did were to set up a system that would allow citizens to be informed immediately when a Russian aerial attack, an assault, was going to hit the city, hit their homes, and direct them to the nearest bomb shelters. That was one part of it, but they did an awful lot of other things in their IT department that allowed that city to both survive and now push back the Russians to the point where a peace is being negotiated 4 years later. It was interesting to us for a lot of reasons. Of course, the ability to innovate an IT system in really, really difficult circumstances. But also, I thought that it was an example of what British poet David Wright says, preserving the soul, which means that you sometimes have to come out of hiding to bring out your real self. Nobody thought Ukraine or Kyiv had the capability in their IT department or their military or their social system to withstand an assault from one of the largest armies on earth, but they did. And it again demonstrated to us as a city, if we looked at the IT department, which Vera was reporting on, that innovation always does win the day, or at least it gives you enough time to survive until you can figure out what to do. So we found this conversation fascinating. It was the most viewed that we've ever presented. And so we decided that with the conflict still going on, with peace being negotiated, and with asymmetric warfare being very topical, and IT being such an important part of that, that cities now have perhaps a new way to identify ways to survive, to communicate, and also to reveal their real souls. So I'm going to take you to that podcast from April 2022. And I think you'll really find it fascinating.
In the current issue of Time magazine, there is a spotlight story on President Zelensky of Ukraine and how he has been formed as a leader during this crisis of war. It's really a great story, as told by journalist Simon Schuster, I believe. During this period, there's been another remarkable story evolving about leadership and innovation in an area that the Intelligent Community Forum focuses on: the ability of cities to keep services flowing and morale for the places we call home high. We know that a quality of life enhances economic and social performance. But what happens when, in the case of a great city like Kyiv, war comes and catastrophe is part of everyday life, and the fear of not knowing what to do grabs hold of the psyche? You'll recall that when we announced our list of Smart 21 cities in Winnipeg, Canada this year, home to the Canadian Museum of Human Rights, I probably need to add, we did name Kyiv as an honorary intelligent community to that list. Little did we know that the city's IT department was functioning like a smart city and doing some remarkable things in the name of resilience and ultimately freedom. We found this out thanks to compelling reporting by one of our guests today, Vera Bergengruen. She's a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist at Time magazine. What we'll be doing on this edition of The Intelligent Community is exploring her work and observations, along with current and former chief digital and innovation officers from 3 Intelligent Communities of the Year, Columbus, Ohio, Tallinn, Estonia, and the current Intelligent Community of the Year, Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. They've been kind enough to spend time with us today, and you will meet them shortly. But to start, I want to read you this passage from Vera's April 4th piece in Time magazine. She writes, for the past 5 weeks, Polovenko, director of IT, and his boss, Kyiv's deputy mayor and chief digital transformation officer, Petro Olenich, have led an exhaustive effort to adapt and repurpose everyday technology for a city that has found itself facing a 20th century style war. Their creative maneuvers are a key reason that most residents of the Ukrainian capital can connect to the internet in underground bomb shelters, find open pharmacies and grocery stores, and go to sleep knowing their phone will alert them of incoming air raids before the physical siren sounds. Vera, welcome to the Intelligent Community.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's an incredible piece of writing. But, the first question I have for you, I think you said on Amanpour and Company a few nights ago that Kyiv did not have to invent their IT infrastructure or the apps for the war, but shift what they had already been working on. Now, everybody today who you just met will tell you that they would pretty much be in the same place. But doing it in the wake of what you say is a 20th century war, which obviously refers back to World War II and the brutality of that war, is a whole different challenge. So, I want to ask you a little bit about that. You did observe that this IT department was ready for something. And of course, I guess they would have never imagined it be this, but tell us a little bit about how they assembled themselves to shift gears so quickly.
Yeah, and thank you again so much for having me. It was really interesting to discover. I think most people before this conflict probably couldn't really didn't know much about Kyiv, didn't know that much about Ukraine, and weren't really aware just how much the country has modernized its services over the last couple of years. And, it's actually a hub. It's a tech hub. It's an entrepreneurial hub for a lot of startups. I mean, even for me, for some of the apps I use on my phone, I noticed that they changed the colors to the Ukrainian flag. And when I opened them at the beginning of this conflict, it told me that they were actually based in Ukraine and they were apologizing to users because they weren't going to be able to update these apps. It is a very, like I said, it's a very tech-centric kind of area. And, when President Zelensky was elected in 2019, one of the things that he really wanted to focus on was modernizing government services and administrative services. And obviously, being the capital, Kyiv was the center of a lot of that. Its IT department, its digital ministry, there's a national digital ministry I've been speaking a lot to. And then there's the city council that has its own IT department and digital ministers. And they were leading a pretty quick, very aggressive effort to modernize all of its government services. And by that, I mean to put them online. They were trying to make sure that everyone had their passport available on an app, that everyone had their driver's license available on an app. People were able to pay their utility bills and their parking tickets on everything on the same app that verified their identity. And even here, I'm in Washington, D.C. I'm not able to do most of that electronically. The U.S. in many ways is far behind these Ukrainian cities when you look at that. They were working on that, for their own reasons. They were working with Apple on a whole project, a pilot project for their census in 2023, which they're hoping they'll be able to do. And they had a lot of very productive relationships with Silicon Valley. And, a lot of these efforts are being led by very young, by people in their early 30s. And so, all of these efforts were happening before the war, and they realized that it actually gave them an incredibly sophisticated platform in order to pivot and use all these as wartime tools.
Yeah, it's amazing. And to the startup analogy, the headline of your story was, quote, "We became like a big startup." And so that's what you witnessed that, right? You witnessed sort of a startup.
That's
mentality.
right. It was fascinating. The thing about talking with a lot of these officials is, they are obviously in a city under siege, in a city at war, back and forth. Kyiv has obviously been going back and forth in terms of the danger. But, you're speaking to these officials, they're in undisclosed locations, they're wearing AirPods and, T-shirts, and you can tell that they've had really long nights. And, in this case, for example, I'm sitting here in Washington, you feel so far away, and you have to realize that they chose to stay. They decided to stay. They many of them decided that the families should stay too. They told me the first decision that they made was, the day of the invasion on February 25th, they all got together in the city council and decided, except for a couple of women who had very young children who went to Western Ukraine, they were all going to stay. And, and then what they basically described was, they just became a big startup. They had to just have a nonstop rolling list of projects, and they had to prioritize them. They had to decide which ones are going to keep people alive. And then secondarily, which ones are going to keep people safe. And those were the two main objectives. But for example, having an app that was able to warn people of air raids was the first priority, or even getting connectivity back up. They suffered a lot of cyber attacks, and they had to figure out a way to, get all their systems back online before they were able to do anything else. And all of these things for them meant keeping people alive. And then secondarily, being able to provide people with open grocery stores, pharmacies, giving them Wi-Fi and bomb shelters. All these different things were secondary, but that's what they meant by a startup, in a sense that they just became kind of an adrenaline fueled, team, just having to decide where should we focus our limited efforts in order to keep most people, the most people possible alive. And one of the things that really illustrated this to me was that they both are wearing these Garmin brand watches. I'm wearing one right now. It's a running watch, and it has a heart rate monitor. And they told me that for the first 5 days, their heart rate never dipped. These are young, fit guys. They usually wear these to work out. And they were saying the heart rate was never beneath 90. They were just not sleeping, drinking, caffeine, and just trying to figure out how to best, again, kind of shield their systems and also help their city the best they could.
Amazing. I mean, you talk about putting it out in the field. Yes, you quoted, I think it was Victoria, and she said her heart rate is usually 62. And it was like 90 for, as you say, for several days. The one final question I have for you before I, turn it over, I want to talk to our colleagues, is it sounded, again, from your reporting, like they were also considering at least a quality of life. Which we refer to as a morale issue in a situation like that. Do I have that right? Was I interpreting that from your reporting, or?
Right. I think that's definitely true. And I think for those of us who hopefully never will have to live through this, but, it's such a bizarre situation to find yourself in. One of my sources kept saying, I'm an IT guy. I don't, I'm holding a gun in my office and I'm not sure what else to do. And when we look at these awful, horrific images coming out of Ukraine, it feels, like you mentioned, it looks like World War II, but really this is a modern connected city and society. And so a lot of the things that they focused on, like being able to get Wi-Fi in bomb shelters, or they aggregated the way that Kyiv works, it isn't one or two cell phone providers like here, it's a lot of them. And so they put them all in one group and asked them to please basically enable it so anyone could roam on different networks depending on where they were moving and traveling, so that no one was ever disconnected. A lot of the things that they focused on were, beyond the obvious, which is food, shelter, open pharmacies, and all these emergency services. for them, a lot of what they focused on was peace of mind, was, knowing that your phone could alert you of an incoming air raid. And not only that, but they would alert you when it stopped. So you didn't have to keep spending all that worrying. Things like that, that they were trying to, like you said, improve people's quality of life. But more than anything, I mean, when you're talking about morale, that's a really big difference, having access to Wi-Fi, being able to tell family you're safe, being able to go to sleep. I mean, all these things, they really designed them. I was struck with how much they designed them from a human perspective, and not just in a basic, war perspective.
Right. The sort of the comfort of the infrastructure, which again, we would not have thought about until a situation like this in your reporting. Thanks, Vera. Martin Maniel is the Chief Digital Officer of the City of Tallinn, Estonia. As the head of digital services, he's responsible for e-services, digital transformation, big data, workplace services, technical platform services, GIS 3D, and information tech, cybersecurity, for a city, by the way, that is the per capita startup capital of Europe. Martin, welcome, and thank you for staying up late for us. We know it's late over there in Estonia.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to see you. As Vera was speaking, I was thinking you, Estonia and Tallinn, are the closest to having had that experience. In 1991, the last Soviet boot marched out of your country, and it was left in the condition that we would not call ideal. Your leadership put together an IT investment strategy and infrastructure that, again, has made it the envy of most countries on earth. When you hear Vera and you read her reporting, were there any similarities? Did you see any connections based on your own experience in Tallinn and where you are today?
Yes, I find many similarities, and I actually envy Kyiv because they are somewhat in the situation where we were some 20 or 25 years ago. Now everything is like it is in European Union. Everything is regulated. There are a lot of rules, etc., etc. And everything, companies are profit orientated, etc., etc. But at this time, we also had, I think, a bit similar vibe where everything was possible. We started from the scratch and were able to do everything. So it feels very familiar, and I also think that in a similar situation we would also be able to regain this mojo, because the times were just so extreme. But yes, the skills were there, the platforms were there, and they were able to build on that, because the needs were very, very specific. They would not have been able to prepare for the specific situation, but the infrastructure, the cornerstones were all there, and they were able to build on that. And that's all you can have.
And how do you, the level of innovation that, I guess there's an old saying, nothing so concentrates the mind as the prospect of a noose, but the innovation just kind of blossomed there. Were you impressed by that, or I know Tallinn has like 500 online services covering everything from housing and healthcare, taxes. I mean, when you have a baby in the hospital, the form's filled out for you automatically. But were you impressed by the level of innovation that emerged in Kyiv?
Yes, I was impressed, but you also have to understand that to some extent, it's some things are easier to do than others. If you concentrate on the whole population, like notify everyone, it's much more easier to do than to concentrate on a specific individual. Does this person has available his medicine during the curfew? So it's at some level it gets much more complicated, but they were focusing on the things where the impact was the biggest, and that's the only way to go. Very impressed.
Right. Yeah. Let me just move over to Moaz. Thank you. Moaz Chabani is the managing partner and chief revenue officer at Summit Technologies here in the United States. Of note, for 8 years, he was the deputy CIO in the Department of Technology for the award-winning city of Columbus, Ohio. He's also, I'm proud to say, the chairman of the jury for the Intelligent Community Forum, which selects cities like Tallinn and Winnipeg for their status. Moaz, welcome.
Thank you, Lou. Glad to be here.
It's glad to see you. I want to get your quick take on what you heard from Vera. How do you respond to it? Here we're sitting in the United States, but as we look over there, what are we seeing?
All I could think about is innovation is one of those things that is a bit fleeting for most of us, and here's why. There are only the gravitational pull of the status quo is so immense, especially in the government sector. It takes serious leadership or a tremendous crisis for us to break free of those shackles of the gravitational pull of that status quo, and Kyiv right now is going through that. The shackles of the gravitational pull of the status quo has been lifted, and you can see tremendous innovation and tremendous ingenuity and creativity to be able to go do all the things that are possible. Only a few months ago, those things were not, because people were so comfortable in that comfort zone where good enough is good enough. On the other side, if you really want audacious innovation, audacious goals, you're going to have tremendous leadership. So, when Vera says, the things that are being done in Kyiv, I wish they were being done in the United States, like having your passport online, having your ID online. And all I can think about is those are audacious goals. Kyiv and Tallinn, for that matter, have been able to achieve those because of the necessity, because of that need for innovation, and there's no cap to them. We have cap. Our cap is the gravitational pull of the status quo, and the pandemic started to lift some of that for us. Some things that as simple as I go back to where we were for even if you're trying to do some urban planning and building and permitting, and you look at that, it was unheard of to be able to conduct a virtual inspection where somebody holds a mobile device and walk you through a new restaurant or a new commercial building of sort, right, and conduct the inspection virtually. That was unheard of. Now it's becoming common practice. So the pandemic, in a way, acted as that urgent catalyst to help us through this innovation bridge.
Yeah, it's one of those sort of unfortunate elements of human experience that it seems like catastrophic events are the things that sort of torque the creative element. But I think you're selling yourself a little bit short. When you guys, when Mayor Coleman took over, in Columbus, there were a lot of challenges there. People were not living downtown. He had a reputation as a very slow-footed city, but he brought in, some tech-savvy people, similar to what Vera was reporting in Kyiv. And there you guys were. You looked around and, you said, hey, there's Ohio State University. There's an amazing healthcare ecosystem here. We've got the supercomputer. We've got accelerators. We've got that great Dublin, Ohio, sitting on our border that has, more Fortune 1000 companies than any other city in the United States on a per capita basis. But you guys saw something there, and you were able to, obviously not in wartime situations, but in a pretty difficult situation in Columbus, make a change. I'm not comparing it to Kyiv, but for the purposes of the audience, it might be interesting to hear that story a little bit.
Right, and that's the second part of the equation, which is audacious leadership, and somebody that's going to lift the shackles, of those limits. And I think, in the Coleman administration, and we had the opportunity to be able to go and do some of the creative things. Urban planning, as you know, is magic. If you know what to do and how to do urban planning, you can achieve tremendous results. So Columbus, like many other capital cities in the United States, it was the downtown area was a very well developed downtown. But it was primarily focused as a business district. You come in, you do your business, and you get out. And you go to your bedroom community, and that's very, very normal, and that is very common in the United States. Well, when we joined the administration, we wanted to turn that around. So there were many goals. A lot of them were technology enabled, but the goals were to be able to turn this downtown area into a vibrant, livable city. And the technology helped, enable some of those, urban planning, and like things like mixed zoning, things like we were able to take the fiber infrastructure and make it more democratized and offer it not to just those that can afford it and can afford the infrastructure, but those that would like to afford it in the future, but they need a little help, in the onset. So that helped bring the small business community into it, that helped bring a very vibrant residential community to downtown. Fiber to the home was one of those initiatives that we took to downtown, and more development. It's one of those success breeds success type of thing. So more, the more businesses got into downtown, the more people started to come to downtown, not just to visit, but to live and thrive. And then you have to develop all the IT services around that. So we created, similar to all this, the one common app that where in my neighborhood, right. I want to know where's my nearest pharmacy, where's my nearest, health provider, where can I go and get a babysitter? I mean, those are the kinds of services that people are looking for. Even dog parks. I mean, where can I take my dog? So because I live in the city now, I don't have the ability to go out in the country. Where's the nearest dog park so I can take my dog for a workout? Right. These are the kinds of services that you have to enable by IT, and that's what we're able to do.
Yeah, and I've always been struck by the wisdom of. I referred to the healthcare industry, that housing project where you realized, or Mayor Coleman will refer to leadership, but you guys all were a team there, realized that the new working class were the people who worked in the hospitals, and they were living in neighborhoods whose homes value had improved so much that they would not have been able to afford to have lived there if he hadn't come up with that program to keep people close to work. So you'd have had the traffic problem. You'd have had a whole bunch of problems. So there was a great deal of wisdom in that planning to look at not just the technology solution, but how a policy to keep people working class in place could keep that city from having a lot of problems that other American cities have. So I was always impressed by that.
Thank you, Lou. Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. I mean, downtown has been transformed from, I remember, living in close to downtown, where you take a look at all the streets. By the way, the streets are like just any other U.S. city streets. They go one way, and the next street goes the other way, and then the other way. So if at 5 p.m., everybody's leaving the city, and if you try to cross the street, you're playing Frogger. You're running for your life, trying to dodge all those cars, but that has been transformed. It's now a walkable city. You have people who work and live in very close proximity, including, the children's hospital that you're referring to.
Yeah. So there's a lot of good things happening in Columbus, Vera. So just a heads up on that. There's also good stuff happening in Winnipeg. Tyler Gooch is the Director of Innovation and Technology up there of the city of Winnipeg. They're our current Intelligent Community of the Year. Tyler, I'm going to ask you a question based on something you did before you got into your seat there, but I wanted to get your reaction on Vera's reporting and what she has said here today.
Yeah, sure. Vera's report hit very close to home for Winnipeggers. Something a lot of people don't know. There's 180,000 people in Winnipeg and the surrounding province of Manitoba who identify as Ukrainian Canadians. So the Kyiv story is very important to us. Similar to what my colleagues said, there's opportunities in every crisis, and I think that's the main point I take from that. When we have sort of this imperative to solve a problem quickly, all the constraints sort of dissolve away. We stop asking ourselves, where's the budget, and what about the privacy review, and the security review, and those sorts of things. And I mean, of course, we need to find the resources to deliver these solutions, and we do need to protect citizens' privacy, and we do need to secure these digital services. But that crystal clear focus and that goal becomes very achievable when we sort of move from this enterprise mindset to this agile, how do we deliver something in a startup mode? We can do it really quickly and with great effectiveness. And that's what I saw in that story. What really impressed me with what Kyiv's doing with very limited resources under extremely tough conditions to deliver new value for their citizens that they hadn't even been thinking about 6 months ago. It's a fantastic story.
Yeah, and maybe Vera can elaborate on this later as well. But I wanted to ask you about some of the work you've done in the area of digital transformation, Tyler, and refer to, as I said, to your old job as Chief Digital Officer for the Manitoba Agricultural Service Corporation. For those of you who don't know, and probably not many of you do, but it's a Crown corporation that provides insurance and credit products to a very agricultural province. You did a lot of work on the digital experience when you were there. And I just want to see if we can apply it to Ukraine. Looking at their ag economy, they are going to be, I think, in a world of hurt. And again, Vera can give us a little bit more on that. But is there anything that occurs to you now that might help them stave off some very dangerous issues ahead related to their agricultural economy?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question, and I could really get into risk management for farmers as an answer for that, because government provided risk management programs for farmers is really what we did at the Manitoba Agricultural Services Corporation. But farming itself as an industry and agriculture as an industry is one of the most high-tech industries in the world today. And what we can do for that industry with satellite imagery, with autonomous vehicles, the digitization of the agriculture industry is a story that doesn't get enough airtime. And places like Ukraine that are on the edge of Europe, that have access to modern technologies, that do have access to that satellite imagery, can make good decisions about their farming. They can increase their food security and food safety using technology. Hopefully, this is a recovery story for Ukraine about what they can do with agriculture, in a positive, bright future that we're all hoping for them. Yeah.
And maybe we'll get a little more specific when we come back. But Vera, that when I read about how that Ukrainian economy's GDP is plunging, and I read about, they're going to miss spring plantings and things of that nature, I think that's an awful problem to be solved. Do you have any experience there? Have you observed how that economy might be stabilized, or whether it is even possible?
So, you're right. Obviously, it's really hard to picture what's going to be happening a couple of months from now or in the coming weeks. I know that there's a lot of, they're definitely receiving a lot of help or reaching out to a lot of people in Europe, in the West, abroad for input. There's a lot of goodwill towards Ukraine. A lot of experts and other governments are offering theirs. Since I've only mainly focused on the digital ministries and on the city councils and things like that, I will say it's been very interesting how much they are already focusing, even in February when they were under invasion and they were putting out all of these tools, they're already focusing on reconstruction. They're already focusing on what's going to come after the war. For example, some of the tools that they've developed let you take photos of damage to your home, to your crops, to any of your property that's been damaged by Russian shelling or for any other reason. And you're able to put all that into a database, which is being collected by a new ministry that they have set up. And they haven't yet quite said what they're going to do with it, but they're already thinking about this preemptively. It's not something they're going to do in retrospect. One of the first things they set up was these kind of databases that are being populated. And just tangentially, I know this doesn't answer your question, but it is one of the most remarkable changes that I've been seeing come up, and I covered this in a different story, is how they're using all these tools also to document war crimes. The same app that you used to be used just to, like we said, to pay a utility bill or to report, a closed metro station or something. That same app you're now using to report the movement of Russian troops or not just damage to your home, but, any atrocity that you may have seen. And so all of this to say that, in terms of the actual, obviously the agricultural problem, and there's a lot of hard times ahead, but they're already putting all of this, they gave people the tools, even as the invasion was unfolding, even when they didn't know how bad it was going to get, they gave people the tools ahead of time to record and systemize and categorize in real time what's happening, so that hopefully they can use this for everything from, even now, they've been using that same app that they used to give people to incentivize COVID-19 measures or vaccinations and things that gave them a little bit of money. They used it for people's relocation funds so they can relocate and things like that. And so, we're going to see, they basically are sitting on a trove of data and of information that they have been gathering throughout this war, which they're already thinking of how they're going to use it for reconstruction.
Interesting. So obviously data science is going to really also take another leap forward when this is over, as
yeah, that's right.
The nation and the cities begin to reconstitute themselves. Tyler, as Vera was speaking, I was thinking of Winnipeg, of course, the home to the remarkable Canadian Museum of Human Rights, which does a deep dive study into the major Holocausts that have happened in the world. And it's just a remarkable place for settling issues among conflicting people. We did a podcast with them. We were told that when President Carter was up there, they couldn't get him out of the place. He took back some notes for the Carter Center. Again, do you see any similarities between what might happen with regard to the data that's being accumulated for war crimes and how that might be studied and used in real terms versus waiting 10 years for a trial in The Hague?
Yeah, the Canadian Museum for Human Rights it really is a fantastic facility, and I was there a few weeks ago. There's a display on the Holodomor, which is an atrocity that impacted Ukraine. Immediate use of that kind of data, pictures, audio, that sort of thing. It's an interesting question, and it actually ties into city services pretty closely. As at least in Canada, we're looking at next generation 911 services, where people can commit or submit rich digital media of crimes to the 911 for police response and for fire paramedic response. So I think there's even an analogy here and a tie-in to our regular everyday sort of public safety services. What do we do with that data? How do we manage access to it? How do we ensure that the people that are working with it don't experience recurring trauma from observing that imagery? Can we use artificial intelligence and machine learning to process large amounts of video, of pictures, and identify situations that humans should look at to assess whether a war crime or a regular everyday crime has been committed? I think we're just at the very beginning of that conversation, but we have the tools. Like, the tools are here today. It's the future is here. We just need to implement it.
Yeah, very good. Martin, I'm going to talk to you about a subject that's near and dear to the heart of Estonians, which is cybersecurity. I knew when I was in Tallinn, Veno Olev, the former CIO, now retired, and your former president, Mr. Eels, was talking about the fact that there's constant assaults from Russia on Estonia. Are you experiencing stepped up activity in Tallinn at this point?
Not exactly in Tallinn, but our government institutions faced a lot of cyber attacks just last week. They lasted about 5 days and then ended. They were not actually too sophisticated attacks. They were just mostly distributed denial of service attacks, but there were a lot of them. We prepared. We saw that the war is likely to break up and cyber attacks might happen. We rose our level of security, but we were not targeted.
Right. How much time in the municipality are you spending on cybersecurity? Is it increasing? Have you sort of found your level, or do you need to innovate more?
The head of cybersecurity of the Estonia says that we should spend about 1/10 of IT budget to cybersecurity, and we are probably doing a bit less, but it has rose every year. In last year's budget, we got a huge rise on the cybersecurity, so we are focusing more and more. Actually, I think that cybersecurity and data protection should be integrated in every our information system, like by design. It should be always there.
Yeah. Vera, I assume that's a constant problem in Kyiv now?
It is, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that luckily we have to remember that they've been, Ukraine has been at war with Russia, or Russia has been at war with Ukraine for 8 years in the east of the country. So in many ways, they are used to their systems being attacked and to having to have certain cybersecurity solutions in place. I'm not saying obviously all of you would obviously be prepared from what I'm hearing, but I'm not sure many other places would be. They already not only were somewhat prepared, but they knew exactly what Russia would likely try to attack first when it came to cyber targets. And they also, like we said, had connections to the outside world, which, like Cloudflare, the US-based company, I think it's based in the Netherlands, but Cloudflare was able to provide them with solutions to get their systems back online really quickly. And now all of their government services are protected from outside attacks, or much more protected. And so they were able to, I think they said they spent much of the first 5 days just trying to get back online, but they were able to also get some outside help that gave their services for free, which obviously is an extenuating circumstance that wouldn't usually happen. But again, that's another way that they were probably more prepared than most of us, for example, here in the US knew from the outside looking in. They already were very aware of their vulnerabilities there.
Yeah. So they did, again, at least they had a head start on that. Mo, as I've been listening to, in particular, Estonia, but Canada as well, and the collaboration between provincial, national, and municipal governments. We don't necessarily always have that here in the United States. Shall we say it's a difficult family to be a part of. And you have a saying that said that when the Fed and state governments fail, municipalities tend to shine. But it doesn't sound to me like that's a viable proposition going forward. Do you have a best practice from your days at Columbus working with the state of Ohio? And is there any observation going forward as to how right here in the United States, where we are, can be improved? Because you're hearing some best practices as we speak.
There are great track records for actually, more increased, what I would consider collaboration and cooperation between the levels of government. And the catalyst in this happened over the last 10 years. And it's been gradual, but there was a tipping point right about 2010, 2011. The tipping point is really when there has been a shift towards a cloud-first approach to technology. So again, going back, it's it democratized everything. Now, small city government can have full access to the same level of technology that a federal government can. So there's no longer this almost blackmail approach to, you do what I say or I'm not going to fund you anymore. Because with that elasticity, with that utility type computing, we were able now, a small village can have the same level of service, the same level of technology as the state or larger municipality or a county or even the federal government. That in itself had created more of an equal footing conversation. Now we can actually sit down and collaborate on things that matter, to us. In Columbus, once that happened, like I said, right about 2010, 2011, we started having very meaningful conversations with the state on technology, on how to use broadband. How do we leverage it to our mutual interests? Funding aside, funding is always going to be a contentious issue in the United States. Who gets to fund what and who gets the say over it? But at the project level, at the initiative level, we have, thanks to great advances in technology, we have gotten to that tipping point, I think.
Yeah, well,
maybe I'm too optimistic.
Well, no, you are optimistic, but I don't know about too optimistic. You're telling the truth. But it is a fact now that smaller communities can punch above their weight because they're able to amplify themselves and make the right investments. And so it is happening. We like to say the middle of nowhere is no more.
That's right.
And we think that sticks. Vera, I have a question. In the Spotlight story this month, President Zelensky is quoted at the end of a very long day by your colleague. And the report reads that he's saying, the same thought keeps turning over in my head. I've let myself sleep, but now what? Something is happening, right now. And I have to ask you, when you did your report on the IT team, did they have a similar sense of anxious duty that there just wasn't enough they could do? Or were they sort of like, like Tom Brady when he was at his peak, right? He's just so calm and he just kind of saw the whole field and he's just moving through it in the moment.
Yeah, I think from speaking with them, it was clear that has changed over time. I mean, like we said earlier in this podcast, for the first couple of days, they're running on adrenaline, they're not sleeping, their country's being invaded, they're making pretty heavy decisions for themselves and their families. But once they decided to stay, or once they kind of settled into a pattern, I think they were hit based on my conversations with them, with the realization that this is going to be a very, very long, complicated, awful time. And they can't run on that speed. They can't sustain that pace, and they can't, the way ahead isn't that clear. Once they've kind of finished going through their list of most important priorities, like we said, that they will have to decide on something else. From what there was this photo that one of them showed me that they had posted on Facebook where they're blinking in the sun and they look really pale. It's the deputy mayor of Kyiv and his IT director and his deputy. And I think the caption in Ukrainian said, first time seeing the sun and I don't know how long. They're mainly in their government buildings. Obviously, it's unsafe some of the time. Now it seems to be better to go out. But they are. It's both, right? I mean, they are charging ahead. There's no shortage of things to do, but it's not. I think, and that's true. I think of most government services across Ukraine. But they really have to settle in and know they're going to be doing this for a long time. And even when the immediate danger for a city like Kyiv doesn't seem to be, seems to have passed for the time being. They still have so much to do, and it's still a horrific war that they have to. The consequences of it, they're going to be living with them for a very long time, and so I think that's definitely Zelensky's quote definitely seems to be similar to what they are feeling, which is, they go home, they sleep, they come back, and each day they're faced with the realization that there's no real finish line right now. Right.
Yeah. I mean, psychically, it's exhausting. I know you refer to World War II, but. How many hours do they possibly sleep? Do you know?
I don't know, but they don't even have a guaranteed place to sleep sometimes. I know that the head of the digital ministry of Kyiv, he said that the house next to him was shelled and damaged. And so he had to sleep in his employees' houses. He was kind of making the rounds, taking showers at different employees' houses. Some of them sleep in the office, but, I'm not sure. I'm sure hopefully these days they've noticed that they need to get a bit more sleep than they did at the beginning of the invasion. But like we said, I think something we all have to think about, especially you as leaders in your own cities and these services, is imagine having to do all this work, almost 24/7 while taking care of your family, while making sure your parents are safe, your partners, your children. I mean, they are making all of these decisions in a really, really difficult situation personally. And so I think that's, for them, that's just an added stress factor. They're trying to solve all these problems as IT minds or as city planning minds or as urban development minds, but at the same time, they're humans who are seeing their own cities destroyed. And so I think that, that's another reason to really kind of be in awe of what they're doing is, they're being innovative, but I think most of us can't even imagine how hard that would be to have to do that under those circumstances.
It's an incredible psychic toll. You're right. And yet they keep doing it. Tyler, I wanted to ask you, are you guys, is the Ukrainian community in Winnipeg asking for anything in terms of more communication services, more information? Is there anything that you're having to do especially for them?
I don't know that they're asking for things necessarily from the city as much as the city and the Ukrainian community are offering whatever we can do to help the people that are in Ukraine and who are trying to leave Ukraine. That we're welcome. They're welcome here, and we're offering our support. I know there are a number of efforts to collect funds and provide other support to people who can't come here, who are going to other places. But yeah, Ukrainians and people whose parents and grandparents came here from Ukraine do form a large part of our cultural fabric, and Winnipeggers, I think, really identify with the tragedies that are happening there.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, we've got to wrap it up now. But I know for a fact, Vera, that when Ukraine's cities are in the phase of rebuilding, and they want some mentorship or best practices or whatever is needed, that there are at least 3 intelligent communities here that would be over there in a flash. So you can tell them that.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that podcast as much as we did at the time. And we, again, salute Vera Bergengruen for her courage going to Kyiv and filing that report, which was, as I said, the cover story for Time magazine. It was a remarkable year. We actually gave Kyiv an honorary Intelligent Community Award. They didn't enter our program, obviously. They were kind of busy, but we thought that what they had done really showed the kind of innovation and just frankly courage to keep going. So we gave them that honor. The statue of St. Michael, the patron saint of the city, still stands in the middle of Kyiv as perhaps a symbol of the soul of that city. And the war goes on, but again, as I said at the introduction, innovation and asymmetric capabilities now using digital technology have really changed the game there. And Ukraine has used it first. And Vera Bergengruen and our other guests really commented on the importance of it and the importance of leadership in unconventional times, which we're certainly in. So we'll talk to you next time. Again, we hope you're having a good summer or a good winter if you're in Australia. And in the meantime, remember, there really, really is not a single place like home. Take care.